I would like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which these interviews take place. I would also like to respectfully acknowledge the Wangal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work.
You look at the CEO positions, if you look at all the board positions, the gender diversity goals that have been set across organizations is great, but I think when other aspects of diversity starts to intersect, and a good example is culturally and linguistically diverse people, the number starts to drop significantly.
Hi, I'm Prema, the host of this podcast, What Can We Do? In each episode, I speak to someone or an organization that's making impact. You will learn about the issue, why it exists, the challenges, but most importantly, how you can be a part of the solution. My hope is that you can take away 2 to 3 tips each episode that will support you in your helping journey. This morning, I have with me Tinai Colawai, who is the founder and director of Knext Career Design. Hi, Tinai.
Hi, my name is Tinai Colawai, and I'm an aunt to 8 beautiful nieces and a nephew, and I have 2 other siblings. I was born and educated in Fiji and started my corporate human resources, or what they now call people and culture career, before going on to what I call a career adventure across the Pacific. The social enterprise that I launched in Feb and March this year is focused on providing tailored career development solutions to people of color, so that they can achieve long-term career success. And this business has been born out of my own experience, my own personal experience, what I've observed here in Australia after hearing stories from people within the culturally and linguistically diverse community, and certainly from refugees and migrants who are trying to secure decent work in Australia.
You mentioned that you started the business because of your own experience. Could you tell us a bit about what your own experience was like?
Yeah, so when I relocated here in 2016, I was fortunate to be able to secure a role in Australia before coming here in Melbourne. And even then, I thought that through my own networks in the organization that I had worked for quite a long time, that I was going to be okay, that I will be able to have access to those stretch opportunities. It's what we call them in people and culture speak. And that really wasn't the case. I came here and realized very quickly that there's networks that I don't have. I don't have the connections into the right people, even within the organization. I was in our headquarters, and that's, it's massive. So that was a challenge for me, and it took me a few years to navigate the whole workplace and try and build my own networks and connections, and actually learn the reality of progressing your career here in Australia. During that time, I also searched for opportunities where I could do some volunteer work. I was very selective about what I was going to get involved in, because I wanted to do something that was going to tap into what I already knew, my experience, and kind of giving that back in a way that was meaningful. So that was about a 12-month process. And eventually I found a volunteer opportunity with an organization called Center of Multicultural Youth. Some of the listeners who are based in Melbourne here will know this organization, and they've done some great work since the 80s to support refugee and migrant youth to find work. So I started mentoring young people from that background, from migrant and refugee backgrounds, since late 2017. And it was through that mentoring experience that I started to hear stories of the challenges that these young people were facing. Some of them were qualified, but they just couldn't get their foot through the door. I've had conversations with them. I provided mentoring, and in some cases, I've helped them, do up their resume, for example, and help them with interview tips. But that is only a very small part of the support that one needs. You need to really dig deep and try and understand what are some of their own personal barriers, and then the external barriers that they will have to navigate and work through in order to secure something that I call is a decent job.
From your experience, what are some of the common barriers that people of color face?
The main ones that I have experienced, just based on what people have shared with me and what they've told me and what I have observed, and certainly some of the desktop research that I have done. It can be language, so language barriers and accent barriers. Lack of access to networks, I've talked about this earlier on, lack of access to networks and connections to the right people. So for example, a mid-career professional who migrates to Australia with 10 years of work experience is already left behind because no one knows them here and they don't have the relevant Australian work experience that is often a requirement in the job advertisements that one comes across. Competition for decent jobs is stiff. So, and what I mean by decent jobs is a role that is permanent, it's full-time, because that equates to more earnings, which means more that you can do for yourself or for your family. There's bias, right? A lot of work is being done by organizations and I believe government, but still more needs to be done. And then recruitment processes, the requirements that can sometimes disqualify you even before you submit your application. And one of those is the experience that you need to have in Australia.
Yeah, and especially the mid-career professional, I can really relate to that. So when I moved from Singapore to Sydney in 2016, or 2017 actually, I'm still playing catch up now. Where else if I'd been in Singapore, my career would be far, I guess I'll be further down my career path. But when I came here, I had to almost start applying for less experienced roles and
entry level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be a common experience for a lot of migrants, and I'm not sure how long it takes to close that gap, because I feel like I'm still closing that gap.
I think more research, and we can talk about this later, but I think the lack of data is really, it can be a hindrance, because the absence of reliable and credible data, I think, poses a challenge when it comes to social reform. So any sort of policy that is, created at a governmental level or even within organizations, when you don't have that data, I think it's really challenging. But yeah, that's a really good point that you've made. Yeah.
When someone comes to you, what services do you provide?
It's tailored. So the services that I provide or Knext provides is tailored. And for those who will see the information on the website, it's knext.com.au. You will be able to see a suite of services that is tailored to students as well as adults. And adults, I have really targeted those mid-career professionals, particularly those who are wanting a change or want to really transform their career. It's more around design, so really putting the individual at the center of everything that we talk about, and really empowering them and making sure that they have that sense of agency to design something that makes sense for them. The definition of success is based on what they define as success, because my definition is different from theirs, and really centering the whole strategy, formation process around the individual. There's a lot of data that I use as well to inform the decisions that's been made, particularly for those who are looking to change their careers. And right now I am working with mid-career professionals who are looking to pivot their career into a digital-focused one. And these are the individuals who have about more than 10 years of work experience, but they're really finding it hard here in Australia. And a lot of the clients that I work with are from migrant backgrounds. And this is not just about a job. Your job is a very, it is an aspect of your life. But your life needs to be brought into the whole conversation to make it something really meaningful, so that you're working towards something that is going to be good for you and your family, really, at the end of the day.
What I'm hearing is when you came, there wasn't something like this and you kind of filled that gap. So what was the response like when you went out to start looking for individuals to work with or clients to work with?
Not easy. And so I found that through the networking events that I went to, even in speaking engagements, people often ask, like, what is it that you are offering that is different? And when I start talking about a service offering that is really tailored to the culturally and linguistically diverse community or people of color, then they start listening, because the work that I do is not only just for people to find a job. Like, that's not what I've set up the business to do. This is about making sure that people are able to live a good quality life so that they don't have to rely on government to look after them. Helping people of color secure those really good opportunities, and also help them navigate what I think can sometimes be a complex workplace, to be able to access those opportunities so that they can progress their career. They can actually achieve those positions of influence where they can change policies or change laws, because we don't have enough representation. If you look at the federal level, the state level, there's not enough representation, even though we make up more than, I don't know what the number is right now, but it could be anywhere between 30 to 35%. You look at the CEO positions, if you look at all the board positions, the gender diversity goals that have been set across organizations is great, but I think when other aspects of diversity starts to intersect, and a good example is culturally and linguistically diverse people, the number starts to drop significantly. So that is where I think the challenge is, and so often the response is like, oh my goodness, what you're doing is going to be a lot of work. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Something good that is going to be important to achieve is not going to be easy. This is not an overnight business. I'm in this for the long run, and it already has its challenges. Fortunately for me, I think I've set up the business at the right time, because 2 months after I set it up, the company fortunately has been signed up to work with students across the state of Victoria to help them with career conversations. And then the other big project that's happening right now in Victoria is what they call the Digital Jobs Project. And that's going to run for the next 3 or 4 years. That is the challenge and the response to my business.
What are some of the wins in doing work like this? To you, what is a successful outcome?
So the successful outcome, it's going to be seeing in the next 5 or so years what changes happen, not just in the lives of the individuals that I work with, but also looking at what organizations are doing to make their workplaces more inclusive. My social enterprise plays a very small role. There's so many people out there who are interested in making sure that bias is removed from the system, that organizations are more inclusive, that people of color are given opportunities, that through the recruitment process, there's that removal of that bias so that people have a fair opportunity at those jobs. So I think, for me, the long-term sort of win is seeing more people of color in positions of influence, because this is where the decisions get made. This is where policies get created and endorsed. It's where laws, certainly at a federal and state level, that's where the laws get made. And so if we have more representation to really influence those positions and create more inclusive organizations, then I think for me that's a win. And then just seeing more people of color be able to live in Australia and feel like it's an equal place. And that's, assessing how someone feels can be quite difficult, but to me, that would be a long-term win where we actually feel that this place is really equal, because I don't think it is. There's a lot of BS, I think, when it comes to equality in Australia. There's still a lot of work to do. I mean, you just have to look at the way Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been treated here. The land was taken away from them and the history is not great at all. And so kudos to them, and those of us who are supporting that community, I think we should, in whatever way we can, support them to take their power back, because I think that is very, very important for the story that Australia tells.
A lot of us migrants come here and we're like, yes, this land of opportunity, but we've only have these opportunities because of the dispossession of a group of people. And that is something I constantly think about. And I think there is a growing awareness of that this is not a place that you come to take. This is a place that you come to respect and live alongside, and give thanks almost.
Yeah, and so for those who are listening and, have friends of friends or people out there who, who have that connection into the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, in whatever way you can, even to have a conversation with them, listen to them, tell their story, that in and of itself is one way to just get better understanding of the challenges that they face.
And what are some of the challenges you face in doing this type of work?
So there's a few that come to mind. One is the poor understanding of what is happening in the labor market. And I think that poor understanding of the reality of the labor market can often mislead people into making career decisions that might not benefit them in the long run. The other challenge is making decisions around careers based on what other people think. The work that I have done with students, I have really been able to, hear them talk about the sort of pressures that, not all of them, some of them, the kind of pressure that they are under to be a doctor or a lawyer, period. And when I have further conversations about what they're interested in, what their natural abilities are, what their strengths are, it's the complete opposite. Like they wouldn't even want to be in those roles. And so it really is about making sure that you understand yourself. And I think that lack of self-awareness can be a big challenge, and really making sure that people take that into account, because in the long run, your interests, your strengths, your abilities, all of that will have an impact on your performance as well. Lack of networks and connections, we've talked about that earlier on. The challenges around advocates and sponsors, especially for those people who are thinking of progressing their career. I think having a sponsor and an advocate to really, campaign for you, provided you are performing as well. You have to be performing in your role and be good at what you are doing. I think the other challenge sometimes can be the lack of openness to understand other cultures and to mingle with them and socialize with them and learn from them. And that includes Australians. Being open to them and really understanding, what's what are some of the things that work for them and has helped them achieve what they've been able to achieve. Because one of the things that I find quite interesting is this expectation that when migrants come here, that things will be the same as what they had experienced back in their home country. And what I often encourage them to think about is, you've come to a different country, you need to adapt to a different environment and a different way of doing things. There's different systems here that you need to educate yourself on and adapt to be able to survive and flourish in Australia. So those are some of the challenges that I've been able to pick up.
Yeah. I would think also there's a steep confidence building curve, because I come from Singapore, and it used to be a colonial country,
Yeah.
So in our case, white people were the know-it-all, and they were the people that, generally they were better paid and stuff. So when you came to this country, you carry that with you, that somehow maybe you're not smart enough, or you shouldn't say something because you may not know the context. And I thought, for me personally, building that confidence took a long time.
I come from a country that was colonized by the British, so there is a bit of that as well, the white people are the saviors. Like, sometimes there can be that as well, that they are going to save us, and I think that sort of mentality just needs to stop.
Yep.
Yeah, because we are very capable, and I think we should also feel that we are empowered enough to be able to take action.
And you've talked about the challenges that you've observed in people that you help. What are some of the challenges you face in setting up a business like this? If you had to do it again, or if you started 2016 again when you first moved here, what are some of the things you do differently?
Oh, I just wish I started earlier and paid a bit more attention to start something off like this earlier on. The challenge with starting up a social impact business, I think, is really understanding the market and the problem that you're trying to solve. And that took time. I think I've probably had a bit of an edge compared to even other career coach businesses that are out there, because they haven't been able to niche their business down to a select group of people that they want to really serve. And I've been fortunate that I've got some work experience that has allowed me to have deeper insights into some of the challenges that people have with their careers and how it actually works from an organizational perspective. But even then, I found it difficult to come up with, to find data, to do the market research in a way that was meaningful. And I was giving myself timelines, because you can do a lot of research and continue to do research for 5 years, and not launch your business. So I had to give myself a timeline. And when I launched, I can say that the solutions that I designed at the time I was working through my business plan, it looks different today, and it will continue to look different. And so, the challenge around being fixated on a solution that you think will fit, that is not the case. Like, you will find, for anyone who wants to go into establishing their own business, just have a very adaptable and flexible approach, because I think that's going to be important to the way you deliver your service. Because now when I look back, what I'm doing now is slightly different to what I thought was going to work.
If there were some tips or 3 things you wanted someone who is now at that crossroads where they feel like they're facing long-term success barriers, what would those 3 things be?
3 things. Lifelong learning is absolutely critical to long-term career success. I think stop waiting for free training, free support, free mentor, free coach, free everything. Just stop it. Invest in yourself, because no one else will. Please invest in yourself. And the other one is look after yourself so that you can give 100% to your loved ones, to your family and the community. And what do I mean by that? Your mental health, your physical health. your overall health and well-being. And I think financial well-being as well, that is also part of the equation to, just make sure that all of that is in order so that you can really go out there and give 100% to the community or whatever it is that you are doing.
Where do you hope to take Next Career Design in the next 5 or 10 years?
So there are three main groups of or types of customers that I am working with right now. Secondary school students, I think it's really important to start the conversation and have the right type of conversation with students at secondary level, especially as they are approaching that year 11 to year 12 stage. And I think that's going to continue. The second group of customers that I'm working with is those mid-career professionals and continuing with that. And the third one is working with organizations or social impact organizations who have a specific diversity and inclusion target that they are looking to achieve. And I am fortunately trialing something with an organization that's a benefits corporation. It's a B Corp, and we're just going to see how that is going to play out. And that program is really targeted towards people of color or graduates or early career starters to go and join the organization through work placement or what they call an internship. So I see Next being involved in that type of work. So it's quite specific. In terms of where I see the organization in the next 5 years, I want to democratize career development, information, make it accessible. So I'm still trying to figure out how that can be done, because I think it's something that everyone should be able to access, and it should be affordable.
Why is the work you do important?
I think it's important for a number of reasons. One, when individuals achieve long-term career success and when their career is progressing, and when I say progressing, it doesn't have to be an upward trajectory. What I mean by career progression is people who are able to take their skills and their experience and be able to transfer it to different industries so they can take a side move, or if they're within an organization, they could take a side move, they could do something different and then maybe get a promotion, but it's not always about a promotion. And so for me, it's about the individuals being able to achieve that sort of success throughout their life, because that means that they are able to, again, it comes down to this, conversation that I always have with my peers and the people within the career development practice. It's about the quality of life that you can have. And if you have the sort of progression that will help you to, achieve your own personal goals, I think that's a big win. The other one for me is the sort of policies and laws that have an impact on careers that is inclusive, that eradicates any form of bias. And I know that some organizations are doing great work with regards to their recruitment process. I think there is a system that can be used now where candidates are almost, where I think candidates are what they call blind candidates. And so there's information about your work experience, even your name, that is not going to be that's not going to be disclosed or will be part of the process. It's only towards the end that people will actually be able to, know who you are. And so I think some of the changes that's happening from a process and systems perspective is really good and moving in the right direction. So that's my answer, about what success looks like at an individual level and what it looks like as well at the sort of macro level.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or follow it on social media. Your support will help this podcast reach more listeners. This podcast is produced by Samuham Media.